Hello, ad world. So one question only. If you are planning to sell anything online in 2021, do you think you are prepared for the changes that are ahead of us, specifically when it comes to tracking in a cookieless world? Well, I'm not sure I'm prepared, and I'm not sure if Nick is prepared, but he's definitely more educated on this topic than I ever will be. So thank you for joining me here for a private coaching session with Phil here at Ad World. This is Mr. Nick Shackelford. Welcome, brother.
And I'm to see you again and be back here on obviously on the stage that we miss so much and bringing people together. I can't wait for all of us to kind of do this with less technology and more stage and more humans around. But I'm so thankful for being here and what a hell of an intro. Let's get after it, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it's my biggest pleasure to have you here. It's always awesome speaking with you. And today we additionally also have a topic that everybody who is attending Ad World must pay attention to. And I think that's one of the biggest issues, that people are not actually aware of what's happening. Do you want to kick it off with a little intro about what people should, focus on a lot more?
No, I certainly will. And this is something that's coming right off of the back of the Apple announcements, and kind of buried right at the bottom of what we are anticipating is a drop in accuracy in platform reporting. And right now, the conversation is against Facebook. It really is just Facebook. Yet it's going to be affecting, as you mentioned, the cookieless world. Cookieless world is coming in 2020, when Google and all these search platforms are no longer going to be applying that third-party tracking on it. But there is Snapchat and TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and all these other tools and platforms that are needing this feedback loop of information that are no longer going to get such a clear understanding of how to optimize or how to even just see the full picture of your data. And it's something that we as a brand, we as an ad agency, we as marketers all really have to come together and solve. And I had a fantastic conversation with one of your friends over there in Austria, and he was talking about, listen, we understand that we're going to be losing a lot of reporting and a lot of tracking. We estimate anywhere between 30 to 40% industry-wide, 30 to 40% of clarity on tracking on platform actions, whether it's conversion value, whether it's cost per carts, checkouts, leads, all of these things. Why is that?
Hold on. Let me stop you. You're saying that advertisers, brands, people doing online marketing, everybody here at AdWorld basically will lose 30 to 40% of data.
Correct. This is what we're being told. Now, I think this is a worst case scenario. Why I think this is a worst case scenario is because even when we're having conversations with Facebook, which again, a lot of this conversation will be shifted and be focused towards Facebook, because that is the primary platform that people are spending majority of their capital on. Whether you're an advertiser, whether you're a brand, whether you're an agency, whether you market, you most likely have 50+% of your budget going to Facebook. If you have it elsewhere, God bless you. I wish I was as good as you guys. I really would. But this is serious. Like, this is when we're talking to data providers or data tools or other agencies or other brands that are trying to figure out this tracking and trying to figure out how are we going to get the information clear enough and quick enough to make optimizations in real time. That's the beauty of digital marketing. That's the beauty of Facebook. That's the beauty of this quick feedback loop, is the fact that you can launch it, understand it, optimize it, scale it, or turn it off, right? People still forget that back in the day, you used to advertise in a billboard or a newspaper or some sort of hard or snail mail, right? And that is where we were getting our ROI. Like, they would have to take multiple days. The attribution was a lot harder to track. And when we're sitting here going like, yeah, we might lose 30 to 40% of overall, I think that's on the high end. I think that's the worst case scenario. And just to make sure that everybody understands what they're losing is iOS, Apple's operating system is no longer communicating what that user ID is to these advertising platforms, because they want to, quote unquote, in their words, protect the user from being tracked, which, as you and I all know, and you attending, we need that. That isn't tracking. That's just giving them more quality content, more things that they actually already interested in to potentially purchase or maybe consume or maybe download. Like, if anything, I believe, and I would love your opinion on this too, and I think everybody else has this opinion with me, I hope, if the tracking goes away, the users of these platforms might be even more frustrated because they're going to get ads that are not relevant to their interests.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I love I love how Apple frames it, right? So
Oh,
they're acting in the interest of the consumer and data protection, but we all know that this is an open war and it's more about money than anything else. But maybe we can step one step back, actually, well, and
okay.
tell everybody who might not be aware of that what is actually going on. Because as you mentioned, it's a war right now, or a battle, Facebook against Apple. But the war and what's going on is a lot bigger, right?
Indeed.
You actually published a white paper that I read a time ago, where you said is really actually Apple against the world of digital advertising
Correct.
until Apple joins those digital advertisers. And right now they have a different business model. So maybe you can give us a little bit of the background and why this all started, and then we'll move into what that means for people who want to advertise right now.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for putting me back in this position, because I think that's extremely important for them to understand where I'm coming from this, because I'm 100% Apple products. I'm on all Apple things. I will continue to be a consumer there. But that's exactly it. They are a hardware product service. Outside of them selling music and apps and that ecosystem of I guess you would say consistent revenue on that end, they were not an ad platform. The Googles, the Facebooks, the Snapchats, the TikToks, they're selling data, for lack of a better explanation. They're selling our data through these other hardware and device sellers, Apple, Android, and that's where they're capitalizing on. Well, Apple's never been that way. They don't want to be that way, so they say. Obviously, there's a lot of changes that could potentially happen, and I've done a little bit of digging myself, and I know one of our great friends on this D-Dang has done such deep analysis in this space. Apple, and our prediction is, I'm not saying it's tinfoil hat based on what we're reading, but I believe they get into this advertising platform and they build their own sort of ecosystem, similar to what Amazon is. You don't necessarily know what's happening inside the Amazon ecosystem, but you know that is their own advertising ecosystem. So I do believe Apple might have something there. I would say every single time Apple comes with a new update, it's Pixel Armageddon, or everybody on the marketing side kind of cries like, "Oh wait, how are we going to be able to track or know what's happening with our data?" Facebook, Snapchat, Google, their entire core businesses are built off of understanding and extracting that data. Do you think that this empire is going to crumble under just a couple of changes? They can't afford it. They cannot afford to continue to invest in these tools and getting the data and providing that data back to them. So yes, it might be frustrating right now, and to understand, listen, the core business model of Apple is to sell devices. The core business model of our advertising platforms is to sell information so that we can have more relevant things to potentially be a part of our devices. So it's an ecosystem that they need both of ourselves. Because one of the big complaint in the big area is within the app developer ecosystem, because that's where a lot of the revenue kind of comes from. Well, where do you think the apps are getting the interest or the eyes to potentially get the downloads on? The Facebooks, the Instagrams, the WhatsApps, the app platforms. So Facebook, as much, and Apple, as much as they want to like go back and forth against each other, they really do need each other. And I kind of use this in a very, like, I guess, harsh way of it seems like it's an ugly divorce, but the child is this giant bag of money that they cannot neglect, whether you're Apple or whether you're Facebook.
Yeah, that's mean, but it kind of hits the point. Yeah.
It's very accurate in the sense of they both have an invested interest in making sure
Yeah.
that this works. So it is a very big political and PR play from both sides.
Understood. Well, let's see what comes out of this, but definitely whatever happens between Apple and Facebook now will also very much shape the entire industry, right? So
Of
can you
course.
give us a little bit of background on what actually is going to happen most likely over the next couple of months?
Right. So I'll give you the 4 technical things that we should expect right here. The first thing is going to be the ATT prompt. So as soon as you're about to log into your app, you might have already been getting it now because they're doing a little bit of regional testing. Apple is on the device side. It's the ability to opt in to continue to be tracked. Now they are using, you kind of alluded to this, they are using some very harsh language to kind of take a stance on, would you like to be tracked? That is not the case. We all understand it is technically tracking, but it's actually giving you more relevant things that you would want to purchase. So this first thing is the prompt that should be coming up as you get an update up to go into 14.5, the iOS update. The next thing would be the lack of detailed interests and audience reporting. This, we've already seen some major announcements out of Facebook where they're getting rid of Facebook analytics. This to me was a tool that my team used. I know a lot of other teams used to get a little bit of granularity in what that purchase path was and how long it might take for maybe a product that sells for 100, 200, maybe even in the thousands. So losing that bigger window of attribution, which is a lot of the reason why some of these newer brands or the people that are just starting out were able to make Facebook ads work, is because they had this long attribution window to kind of judge performance. Well, that goes away from 1 to 28 days all the way back to like 1 to 7. Now, I will go into like, how do we solve this? How do we talk through this? And how do we kind of build around that later on? But in this specifically, losing the visibility into that deeper attribution model will provide a little bit of headaches, solvable, completely solvable, no issues here. And then the last one that I believe will be something for me and our team and your team to kind of like navigate through is the random updates of the last 48 to 72 hours of data. What Facebook has completely told us is, as we look into our ad account, say we're logging in the day of, we're going to go in and make some optimizations. The data between the last 48 to even almost as far as 72 hours ago is not fully updated or accurate. What does that mean? And anytime I get these questions from people, I'm going back and forth with all my other nerds and geeks about this. They don't know what this means. They're just looking at the data going, so Nick, what I understand is when I read my data in the platform, and it might show me a 1, 2, 3, 4x ROAS, whatever that is, that actually might not be the data that I'm looking at on the day of. So if I'm on Tuesday, I'm looking at Tuesday, it might not be the Tuesday data. I actually think it's going to be the Monday, Sunday, or Saturday data that's just not reporting. It's me.
That's a nightmare.
Yes, and it kind of removes the secret weapon of what? Of the real-time understanding of data and attribution and decision-making, which puts me into this other spiral of like, well, how do we really know how to advertise them?
Thank you very much. Well, that's definitely challenges to solve. All right. So looking at those challenges, obviously with all challenges, there's opportunities, right? And so I'm happy for everybody who's watching this right now, because this is their chance to prepare. The question then, of course, is if we have those 4 issues, right? What are people supposed to do? What's like the first, the second, the third, the fourth thing that people should tackle now, so they are at least ahead of the curve and better prepared than their competition?
Yeah, so this is something that won't be new. And so you should hear a lot of people that are leading in this industry talking about this. And it's truly understanding the marketing messages that are driving conversion, truly understanding the angles in which you guys are communicating, why a consumer needs to buy, download, subscribe, or fill out your form. And this is something that's not new, but we've been very lazy because these platforms that we leverage have such unbelievable targeting, and it takes a lot of like the thought work and the guesswork, because there's a lot of companies that were built in the last couple of years that didn't necessarily have to invest tons of time of understanding their audience, copywriting, and creating specific content per platform, per angle, per person, per persona. So the first step that we jump into is like, okay, if I'm going to lose clear reading or super accurate understanding, let's say 30 to 40% of my understanding of who's taking action on platforms are going to go away from me. What do I build? How do I structure? What does that look like for me to kind of get a clear understanding of this? The first thing is, how do we survey our consumers? The first thing we have to do is learning to send out the right questions and send out the right surveys, so that we're getting the data and feedback as to why they're buying the product, why they need this product, and why this is solving that problem for you. The second thing is, you have to invest in copywriting and content creation. This is something that is going to be, whether you're hiring an outsourced team, whether you're having and building that internal team. I have a lot of thoughts on this too, because we've been having to try and solve this as it comes into this current change that we are all anticipating. And that to me looks like someone that owns your creative director, that just owns the brand wholeheartedly, because that isn't going to be an outsourced agency or an outsourced freelancer, because they don't live and breathe that brand, right? They are going to be an amplification of what it is you're currently doing. If you aren't giving them enough of that clear messaging, if you aren't giving them enough of that clear stance or presence, they're not going to know exactly which direction to take it in. The final thing that I would say on this is channel dependency. We used to always just use one channel, maybe 2 channels at max. We have to start investing in these dollars on these other channels, whether it's owning organic, building up the email list and the retention side, as well as little bit of the SMS stuff. I know it's interesting on the international side of SMS, but really not putting all of our eggs in the single basket of what Facebook is. We're not putting our eggs in the single basket of what Snapchat is. That to me is already an issue that we've all been relying on. But because it's been so good up until this point, we've never had a need a reason to change. And that final one I would tell you is never optimize against a one-day click. No one's ever gone broke by optimizing on a one-day click, and it's not ideal. I get it, especially if there's a lot of especially if your value of a product is a little bit more on the higher end side, 60, 70, 80. There's consideration period. There is a real thing of YouTube conversions. But if you're able to build a model around a one-day click, whether it's Facebook being your source of truth, whether it's going to be Google Analytics, whether it's your UTMs, allowing that one-day click be the benchmark of where you make your decisions will at least help the business have a clear understanding of benchmarking.
Fantastic. Wow, that's a lot to digest, actually. But I appreciate that. That's very concrete and actionable tips. I love that. I also love the focus on content and really understanding a brand and get that out. I think that's something that a lot of companies are not doing enough nowadays. And that actually leads me to my next question, which is there's obviously people watching us here right now who own a brand, right? They build their own brand, they build their own company, sell their own products. And there's also a lot of agency owners, marketeers, affiliates here, right?
Yeah.
Do you see any difference in how those should approach things? Because obviously for agencies, for affiliates, a difference in tracking might change their entire business model. For brands, it might just change their approach. What's your take on this and the differences depending on who you are and what you sell?
This is something I really, really reflect on. I actually spend a lot of my time thinking about this because we own brands. We have people close to us that own brands. We are marketers and we work closely with affiliates. So all of them are one and the same. And what I mean by like visibility into the decision making. The brands need to understand the decision making. The affiliates, marketers, and agencies, well, put them on, let's say they're on the advertiser side versus the offer or the owned brand side. Let's start with the brand side. Right now, up until this point, maybe you're a marketer, maybe you're not a marketer, maybe you have a great product, you're a product person. You relied on other people of telling you like what you should do on these platforms, how much you should spend, what your ROAS looks like on these platforms specifically. Now, unless that's being tied to what we call an MER or marketing efficiency ratio, or your net profitability at whether you're in Shopify, WooCommerce, whatever that may be, your true north is what you need profit and margin wise at the end of that one day. Now, when us as advertisers, we're always going to be asking, hey, we want to push as much spend as possible at as much scale as possible at the perfect level of scale and efficiency. We don't want it to be extremely efficient. We don't want the 4, 5, 6, 7x return because that means we're leaving cash on the table and we'd rather acquire that customer. And that's the agency, the marketer, the affiliate side of things where we want to continue to push. But you as the brand owner, by setting very, very clear monthly, quarterly, and yearly targets, it's going to allow all of your partners to understand what you're mapping towards. Not holding individual, we like to call them channel mercenaries, the advertisers, to just Facebook, just Instagram, just Snapchat, just something. Allow them to use their portfolio because it really is an ecosystem. And we have this by first time experiences, when a brand comes to us like, hey, you're really good at these things, just do those things. Well, it can't be that way anymore because there's a lot more hands there's a lot more hands coming into this pot. And there's a lot of different user experiences as they're using different platforms. It might be the same exact brand, but they're interacting much differently, whether it's on Snap versus Instagram and Facebook. So on the brand side, it really is understanding and owning two metrics. What is your net profitability, your marketing earned, or your MER, and your CAC, new customer cost to acquire them, new CAC. Because as each one of our platforms get more and more expensive, it still doesn't matter as long as we're able to acquire at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, that customer at a certain CAC that's needed for you to be profitable on each unit sold. So that to me is, on the brand side, you have to own these numbers, and that's the truest thing that you can hold against yourself because those are your KPIs. After that, everything else is just kind of noise, and it doesn't matter what your followers is, your growth is, your subscribe rate is, as long as it's making money at the end of the day, the brand side's in a good position.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, understood. Okay, I want to also hear a couple of things that people should not do, right? I'm a person who works with goals and not goals, right? I want to understand what I should not focus on, so I have time for the stuff that matters? What's like your top 3 things that I should not focus on, given all the changes that we're gonna see over the coming month?
On the brand side, something that I would not focus on is channel specific ROAS targets. I understand that it has to be a goal that we set because it holds everybody accountable, but that's not the true source of data. That's not the true source of clarity, because there's a lot more things happening within that platform. And especially if we're going to be losing visibility on what those metrics look like, you can't be so reliant on what that Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat is going to be showing you. That is something up until this point, maybe I would say even up until 2020, we were able to like judge and run the business off of what that 1 or 2 single channels were showing. We can't play that anymore. You have to look at the one source of truth. You have to have your own internal attribution model. You can't let Facebook's 28-day, Snap's 7-day swipe up, and Google's last click be the dictator, because everyone's going to be clamoring for those conversions.
Absolutely, yeah. I see that in a lot of conversations that I have during ad world now. Like omnichannel is well, not a new thing, but it's something. It's an old thing that people should finally really take into consideration. And obviously, they also have to have a model where they work on attribution and really make sense of all that data. But it's now or never, I guess. Okay, 2 more things to not focus on. Do you have anything?
Yeah, the second one is if your agency marketer, or whether it's your agency, your freelancer, your marketing department, if they're coming back to you having conversations about interests and audiences, that's a conversation you shouldn't be having, because interests and audiences aren't as impactful as angles and concepts and positioning. So shifting the conversation away from like, what audiences are we targeting, or what campaign structures should we be doing? Which, yes, I'm not saying that's not important. It's just not the most important thing to be focused on if you're a brand, even if you're an advertiser. It's what communication, what angle, what positioning is resonating the best. Because a lot of this conversation needs to move away from, I'm targeting Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian, and Kylie Kardashian. I'm targeting these 3, versus us going like, actually, when we show up close image of a woman's face versus up close image of a woman's arm versus an up close image of a woman's hair, these are performing better for us. That response from the consumer is way more important than this internal number of interests or audiences.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. Do you have one more tip?
I do. My final one is,
okay,
you're probably already gonna guess this. If you're analyzing your marketing budget right now, and it's heavily skewed towards advertising dollars versus content creation dollars, revisit the budget. Revisit the budget in the sense of how much should be allocated towards creating new content on a consistent basis versus amplifying the content on your current consistent basis. Right now, what we're asking with brands, say they come to us or they want to talk through, hey, we have $100,000 to spend. How much of this should go into advertising? How much of this go into investing in the content? We'll use 100,000 as a simple metric. Minimum 30%, $30,000 of this entire thing should be invested in the content. $70,000 of the amplification of that content. Now that could be done at $100, $30. The numbers are relevant. The main thing is a larger portion of what we believe in the past of just amplifying and doing small iterations and changes need to be more well thought out, thought through, and invested in, which takes a lot of time and of analysis.
Wow, that's a lot to consider. Okay, thank you. I love that budget split idea. That's actually something that I really have to make my clients and people I work with really aware of. You would think that people work in budgets and work in understanding those budgets, but the problem is that usually those things just don't fit together. Nobody's looking at that like from top down, understanding how those things also move together to push everything forward. Thank you. That's amazing. Okay, unfortunately, we're almost out of time. We could go on with this forever. I want to have like a couple quick tips for our audience to get started. So first, we get everybody scared. Then we give a little bit of the background of everything. Now we gave some do's and don'ts, and I want to close this off with 1, 2, or 3, whatever you have top of mind action steps for people to implement right now.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking this, because we just went through this. The progression of creative, and I'm talking specifically on Facebook right now, the progression of creative should start with an image and very big, bold text. What I mean by this is picture the memes that we get, or the quotes that we get on Instagram that are shared very frequently or often. using, because Facebook removed the large text rule, using a colored background, because that's important. The color that's choice, the color that you're choosing to run as an ad is extremely important. Using the on-branded colors or the most standout colors on the feeds, which from our analysis is yellow, pink, and green. Those three are the ones that stand out and are clicked on the most with the highest CTR: yellow, pink, and green. However you want to do with that, variations, it's up to you. And use the trigger words for an angle that is specific to the consumer you're trying to speak to. Let me give you an example on this. Say we were to talk about antimicrobial sheets. The background might be a yellow, pink, or green, but the quote might be college teen needing to refresh. That's it. That's literally it. Using those words as like a litmus test to understand, should I continue to go deeper in this direction? That way you can expand on it with actual real creatives. You can expand on it on a testimonial. You can expand on it on any other version that involving of those specific words. Another example would be if you are a housewife and you're doing too much laundry, and the antimicrobial might be the way of like doing less laundry. Stuck at home washing too many X. This way, all it is big bold text with the different colored backgrounds. See how this performs, whether you're using a dynamic creative test or you're just using an original post ID. Allow that to be a dictation as to going back to your creative team, your copywriting team, and be like, all right, guys, here's the initial path forward. Let's run with this. And obviously, I have to make sure that we are very, very clear on this. You're always optimizing for conversion. No video views, no engagement, nothing else.
Absolutely. I love that. That feeds very much into what you said before about content, right? And the two examples that you gave, they really, if I understood correctly, you call out who they are, right? And the solution that they're looking for, but you're doing that right in the beginning. That's something that should be obvious, but it wasn't to me. So thanks for sharing.
This is important. This is extremely important because it's the cheapest way to validate a concept or idea. It's the same thing like a tool called PickFu, where you can put in a couple of words and let people vote on whether they like this or they don't like this. It's so quick, it's so easy, and it works in our routine. So we'll do this every month. We'll have our list of angles or keywords that we're seeing trending. Maybe it's a 5-star reviews on Amazon, or it's a 1-star review on Amazon. And we're just putting these words in our tests and allowing these words to kind of dictate, okay, we have to go develop this a little bit more. Oh, these ones didn't hit. Well, there might be an outlier that we didn't even think of. So it's easy and small spend to really put the entire creative team in the right direction.
That's amazing. We may not need tracking after all, if we're that good in content and so creative in putting things together. Thank you so much, Nick. As always, this was enlightening, and I appreciate talking with you. Thank you for all the value you're providing to our audience here. Pleasure speaking with you.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for your time, man.
What an incredible day one of Ad World. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But now get ready for our biggest day yet, day 2 of Ad World, where we're gonna have absolutely amazing people join us at the show, including people like Seth Godin, Craig Clemens, Nila Ali, Pat Flynn, and so many more. Make sure to be back tomorrow. Put your alarms on extra loud. I can't wait to have you back for day 2 tomorrow. We'll see you then.